Okay, now I'm back. I've seen Thor Ragnarok a second time, and as promised, this is my spoiler review. So that means I'm going to be talking a lot about spoilers, basic plot points. Not probably going to talk about everything, but just things I wanted to talk about the most. So this is officially a spoiler warning, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, please leave. I have a spoiler-free review already, so don't stick around for this. But if you have seen the movie already, or you just don't care, feel free to stick around because we're going to be talking heavy spoilers right now. Okay, so the way this movie starts off, the first thing you see is Thor chained up in some fiery cave underground lair that kind of looks like hell. And if you remember the first Thor Ragnarok trailer, that's pretty much how this movie starts. And he's having a conversation with Surtur, the fire demon, who is voiced by Clancy Brown, ironically enough. And he's just talking about how he's going to be the one who's going to create Ragnarok. And naturally, my first thought from this was, okay, so it's going to be Thor's job to stop him before anything can happen. You can kind of tell this movie's already started to become a comedy because while he's having a conversation, he's just kind of like twirling around randomly, and Surtur's just kind of like sitting there patiently waiting, like, okay, so. And then right after that, the first thing that happens is Thor just has his hand out and waits for his hammer to come through, and there's this delayed reaction because nothing's happening, but then he kind of brings up the fact that the hammer just comes from him at random points, and sure enough, it happens, and then he just lays waste to everything, and gets out and gets back to Asgard. He gets back to Asgard and he's seeing a play on what happened to Loki when he died in the last Thor movie, or when he supposedly died, and Odin's watching it. Now, if you remember from the ending of Thor Dark World, the Odin we saw actually is Loki, so that's what we think. You can kind of tell he probably starting to figure things out because the play is like over-dramatized a little bit, and you can even see this little giant Loki statue standing around, so yeah, it should be quite obvious to everyone, including Thor, that this isn't the Odin we know and love. And then when Thor goes to greet him, he notices that things aren't quite the same. He asks why you are changing a little bit, and so he decides to play this game. He just throws his hammer out, and then he holds his dad's head in front of the path, and he says, you know what, the hammer always comes back to me when I summon it, so we're just going to stand here and wait for it to come back. And it's clear that the hammer is actually going to go right into his skull if he summons it. And then Loki eventually snaps out of form and he reveals he's his actual Loki and not Odin. So after that, Loki and Thor go to Earth, and then we have a good Doctor Strange cameo. I did mention Doctor Strange and Thor's interactions at the end of the Doctor Strange movie, which is why I said it had been a year since we last saw Thor. And this is basically the same thing with just a little bit more dialogue. And then he says, okay, so Odin is all the way out in Norway. And then he just like beams them out to Norway because he's kind of tired of dealing with Thor and Odin, or Thor and Loki. And after that, they find Odin, and he's just standing there in the meadow, well, out in the middle of the field, just talking. And he dies. That's right, Anthony Hopkins just dies with maybe, 5 minutes of total screen time in this movie. But he just kind of he just closes his eyes and just turns into magic dust or whatever and just flies away. Like he's a fairy or something. Okay, that's cool. And then the next thing you know, Hela shows up, and she's actually Odin's firstborn. Way to kind of retcon things a little bit, and apparently they had a bit of a disagreement a long time ago, and that's why she was imprisoned, and he didn't tell Thor or Loki about this, or anyone really, and we're just now finding this out, and she just appears and then gets ready to lay waste to everything. They try to get back to Asgard, but they inadvertently summon her too, and she's the only one who gets to Asgard, while Thor and Loki end up on the trash planet. I think it's called Sakaar or whatever. At least Odin's death was something a little bit emotional rather than other people's deaths. I'm talking mainly about the Warriors 3 because as soon as she shows up, she kills two of them right off the bat, like that. I don't even think they had a line of dialogue. They just got killed. They got brought back just to be red shirts. The third guy dies a bit later in the film, like a couple minutes later, but he gets impaled quite nicely, along with a bunch of other soldiers. She just completely fucks everything up. And then you introduce the Valkyrie, who's this collector who's just trying to drink away her problems. Well, that's what she does. And that's what I liked about Tessa Thompson's character in this movie. She was funny, she was relatable, and she could kick ass. That's basically what I liked about her. And here's where I mentioned about seriousness and comedy in this movie. In my last review, I talked about how on one side of the pool with Sakaar and the Trash Planet, things are mostly funny. Well, meanwhile, back on Asgard, things are serious. While everything is semi-funny and serious on Sakaar, Asgard is mostly about Hela trying to take over and trying to make everyone subservient to her. She even takes Scourge, who's played by Carl Urban, under her wing. Kind of odd, though. Those two were in Lord of the Rings together, and I thought this is kind of like a cool Lord of the Rings semi-reunion right here. And then at one point she goes into the throne room and basically like destroys this ceiling monument, which is a mural, and it reveals everything underneath. So it reveals that Odin was kind of this double antler thing trying to run an empire like she was. I do like the fact that they did an alternate take on her history. Well, like the fact that she actually revealed what really happened and all the history that we know so far, and according to Thor and Loki and everyone else is just, well, it's just bullshit, and she just revealed what really happened. The fight with the Hulk and Thor, well, we've all seen that in the trailers. We all knew it was coming, so I want to talk about that. That was one of the most enjoyable moments of this film. So he's definitely wearing his Planet Hulk, World War Hulk armor on him, and there's this huge fight, and then you can see all the excitement. But what really sells this scene is the fact that when Loki first sees him, he's sitting there panicking like, oh shit, I have to get off this planet. Then at one particular point where they fight, Thor is trying to calm the Hulk down, but then he just grabs him and he beats him up in the exact same way that he beat up Loki in the Avengers. I'm not kidding, it was actually shot for shot pretty much the exact same way. And then it cut to Loki's reaction like, that's how it feels! It was just perfectly shot, and I love that scene. And the fight itself wasn't too short either. Afterwards, later, you kind of find out that the Hulk has actually been this way for the last 2 years. And in that time, he's actually developed his own vocabulary, sort of. Well, he still has Hulk speak, but he can actually talk and hold a conversation now. The moments between Thor and Hulk, where they're just sitting down talking, are actually some of the coolest. Those are good comedy, a good mix of serious, like how everyone calls the Hulk the stupid Avenger and everyone hates you. And then he just kind of has a fit over it, and he's like, nah, that's not true. In the middle of this, you have Jeff Goldblum as Grandmaster, who, once again, is still a joy to watch. And like I said, I'm pretty sure he just walked on set one day and is just being himself, and it sells like it usually does. There was this little weird moment earlier before the Gladiator match where he puts Thor in his chair and puts him through this conveyor belt, explaining everything that happens in the world. And then you have the Willy Wonka song playing, and I just thought, okay, that's funny, but why is that here? Like, that's a little strange. I mean, I laughed a little bit. I did laugh, admittedly, but that's kind of odd. And then it occurred to me, this is something that Jeff Goldblum would do, or Grandmaster rather. This is something that I could totally picture him doing for no reason. Meanwhile, eventually they decide they're going back to Asgard, and it eventually takes all his work, all of Thor and Hulk's work to get back. And they have to convince Valkyrie to come back too. And she really just wanted to forget about Asgard because it's revealed in the backstory that she was part of an army of Valkyries, and Hela killed pretty much all of them, and she kind of just wanted to go back here, start a new life, and forget about all that shit. Eventually, Thor wins her over, and they get back there. They go through the devil's anus, as it were. It's a passageway, not actually a devil's anus. There is a little neat bit of a conversation they have about the Hulk, where Bruce Banner finally reverts back to himself, and then he and Thor are talking, and he said, you know what, I don't know if I could change into the Hulk again, because the next time, I might be stuck as a Hulk permanently. That's actually a good bit of interesting risk and a new depth towards him, because, like you said, he was in the Hulk form for the last 2 years, so it's literally been since Age of Ultron that we saw the Hulk, and he's been that way since. I do have another question, though. I have to wonder, like, how exactly did he get to Asgard? Because at the end of Age of Ultron, Nick Fury said that the Quinjet that he was on, parts of it just fell into the ocean, and then he probably swam to Fiji. But according to, like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they said that the Quinjet can't go into space. So I'm guessing maybe this is a new, different kind of Quinjet. At least that's my assumption, because there's no way he could have gotten there like that. That's a little bit of a minor point, but I'm still wondering about that. Anyway, so they get to Asgard, and then the big final showdown happens, and how is everyone going to beat Hela? She's the goddess of death. She's clearly the most powerful person here. So eventually they have the fight. Heimdall is actually in the movie, not as much as I would like, but he's actually trying to evacuate all Asgardians. And Thor personally tries to take on Hela, but he doesn't have his hammer, so he's kind of nerfed a little bit. So right when she's about to kill him, Thor flashes back to a conversation with his dad, and he asks him, well, I can't beat her. I don't have my hammer. And then Odin has a nice response. He says, you're not the god of hammers, are you? You're the god of thunder. And then Thor just comes down. He's just this huge demigod now. He's like full power. He's got lightning coming out of his eyes. He's actually missing an eye because she knocked one of them out. But he just comes in this badass format like he's ready to fight. And he just completely kicks everyone's ass. And even then, he's still no match for Hela. In the midst of the scene, there is a point of which where Bruce Banner jumps off the plane. He tries to fight off everything, turning back into a Hulk, knowing full well he might never come back. and he just kind of hits the ground. He just kind of hits the ground, and it looks like he dies. I honestly did think he was dead for a little bit. Then I remember what he said in the Avengers when he tried to kill himself by shooting himself in the face, and the other guy spat it back out. So I'm not convinced 100% that Bruce Banner is dead, but I'm really sure that we're probably going to see him again. It'll be a while before we see him as Banner, but at this point, he's the Hulk right now. Regarding how they defeat Hela, it's actually completely playing with my expectations of this movie. In order to defeat Hela, Loki has to go take the Skull Searcher, the guys they killed at the beginning of the movie, and puts it in the Eternal Flame. And then he just rose to the sides of a mountain and just lays waste to everything. The huge twist here is basically that Thor Ragnarok was trying to prevent it, and in fact, the only way to stop this evil is by unleashing a worse evil, ergo causing Ragnarok. That's not what I expected going into this film. I actually thought Ragnarok was going to take place in the end of the first act, but here it is. They actually had to cause Ragnarok to stop Hela from taking over completely. It gets worse because eventually, once they evacuate everyone, Asgard's destroyed. That's it. It's gone. It's literally gone. It exploded. There's no more Asgard anymore. I have to admit, I was a little upset because it was supposed to be a rather serious moment, but it was kind of nerfed with a bit of comedy in there at the last minute. This new character, Korg, who's voiced by Taika Waititi, am I saying his name right? Yeah, Korg, he's this rock monster, and he's saying like the foundation's strong. I'm pretty sure Asgard's going to be around. And I thought to myself, it's going to explode, isn't it? It's totally going to explode. And sure enough, it does. That's a bit of a really serious moment because Asgard, that's a huge turning point. And now, it's gone.